Dear family and friends, we all have heard the expression, "Only the good die young," and this truly fits our Cynthia's sudden and untimely departure. I was totally taken aback when John approached me a week ago to do this eulogy, for which I am truly honored and privileged. Death ends a life, not a relationship. My mother and John were first cousins, so technically, John and I are second cousins. However, since there was a big difference in age between the two, my mother was affectionately addressed by John and his siblings as Sister Virgie, and my dad as Uncle Frank. My sisters and I grew up like first cousins to John. When John got married, Cynthia embraced all John's relatives all over the years. Over the years, Cynthia was instrumental in keeping the relationship strong. In the last month before my dad passed, John and Cynthia visited him regularly, and in the last week before my mom died, Cynthia faithfully went to the hospital after attending morning mass to assist mom with her breakfast. How ironic it would be that Cynthia gave Sister Virgie her last breakfast on January the 7th, Cynthia's birthday, before mom left us 2 days later. Errol has never forgotten the love and affection that Cynthia gave to his mother, Maggie, and we only just discovered that they both shared the name Margarida. Their encounters, which Maggie looked forward to, were full of jokes and laughter, together with conversations about Goa and Britona, the village they hailed from. Cynthia and John made it a point to attend special family occasions, including the out-of-town weddings. Our relationship continued to strengthen. Earlier this year, we shared much fun and laughter at our home, having dinner with our other relatives. And this summer, Cynthia gloated over the fact, as Dennis said, that she and I beat Errol and John hands down at a 7-hand card game. Cynthia had a unique sense of humor, and at times would tease others with corny and annoying comments just to rile you up. Although she and Errol argued at times, with each one standing their ground, lately she secretly expressed to a few people, including her sister Fina and her brother Rosario, of the fond regard she had for Errol. Cynthia's life, though short, was well lived. She was a very caring, thoughtful, supportive, and helpful individual. She inspired others and touched the hearts of the elderly, the sick, and the needy. We were blessed to have her in our lives. She was devout and pious, and her strong faith was obvious, which she demonstrated by her actions. 2 weeks ago, she invited a friend for dinner and gave her statues of Our Lady, encouraging her to spread the faith. She was a constant supporter of all fundraising events. She would readily arrange or offer rides for those lacking transportation. Cynthia often went to the retirement homes to visit or play cards with the old folks. Sometimes she had John accompany her with his guitar so they could entertain them by singing old-time favorites. Some men recently had the opportunity to spend time at the GOA Silver Linings with John, while Cynthia performed the caregiving duties at the house that day. Volunteering to take some folks to doctor's appointments was another one of their many kind gestures. During COVID years, Cynthia was deeply involved in the online GOA Retirees Saturday Rosary, often leading in the prayers and meditation. She was always there to help with the serving of the food and/or cleaning up at the weekly GOA line dancing and Zumba sessions. Needless to say, she was a staunch GOA member who ardently promoted new membership and participation of all GOA events. Cynthia's relationship with her immediate family was endearing. She often spoke highly of John's culinary skills and gardening abilities, raving about the 5-foot zucchinis from his vegetable patch this summer. Recently, she gave him accolades on the extensive progress he demonstrated on his new guitar. With much pride, she watched John perform the Kunbi dance at the Viva Goa this year. Cynthia was a devoted mother to Paul, Chastity, Rachel, and Mike, whom she loved dearly. It was very evident that her grandchildren, Luke, Tristan, and Gabriel, were her pride and joy, whom she absolutely adored. She was a loving sister to Fina, Edmund, Rosario, and Rini, and most of all, she often expressed how much she loved and missed her deceased sister, Melba. People may forget what you said or did, but will never forget how you made them feel. Living the lessons that Cynthia demonstrated through her way of life is the best way we can honor her. To John, Paul, Rachel, and your dear families, may the sorrow you feel in your hearts be lightened by the sweet memories and the deep love that Cynthia had for you. To our dearest Cynthia, God has you in his keeping, and we have you in our hearts. Enjoy the heavens above. You are gone, but will never be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Delphine. We've heard about Cynthia, her time in Canada, and part of it from Delphine, but we do not know very much when she was young and attractive, and people watched her. So I'm going to call one of her classmates, who is a very close friend of, was a very close friend of Cynthia, and she said, I'm a little bit nervous, so please do not make her any more nervous. Tess Dessa, would you please come up? Tess, you don't need to bring that cane. I'm behaving myself.
Nervous is not in my vocabulary. It's okay? Thank you. Can you hear? Is okay? This old cane. Good afternoon, everyone. I stand before you, heartbroken in a profound loss, yet honored to pay tribute to our dearest Cynthia. John, Paul, Rachel, Fina, Rosario, and families. Today, we grieve with you over the loss of a beautiful spirit, good and holy, and one who lived her life true to her convictions. Cynthia was a woman of today, but also tied firmly to her roots, culture, and religion. She had her own identity with an extreme inner strength and a strong will to do what she believed in. She blazed through life's challenges and never broadcast her own achievements or struggles, but instead focused with joy and pride on the successes of all her family, with a deep and selfless love, and in return was loved deeply by them. Tall and beautiful, I don't know why the priest said she was small, tall and beautiful with a sunburst smile and laugh and a quick sense of humor, Cynthia certainly left a lasting impression on us all. God's will is beyond our mortal power to comprehend, but He gives us strength and solace through precious and wonderful memories. So let us keep Cynthia's memory alive and carry her in our hearts and say, not in grief that she's no more, but live in thankfulness that she was. My lifelong friendship with Cynthia started in grade 4 when my family moved to Ginger. Mind you, our friendship started on a cautious note, as in grade 4, Cynthia was good as gold and a teacher's pet, while I was a regular on the punishment desk with John Lawrence. But we became friends, and over the years, just like my sister-in-law Frida, and Frida Lobo, Anne, and so many others, Cynthia too was embraced by my parents as yet another addition to their 6 daughters. Cynthia, in her turn, became part of our family, sharing in our joys and sorrows, and always with love and keen interest in the well-being of our children, Remy and Risa, my sisters, especially Rahana, and the family. And today, they all grieve too. As we moved on in school, our friendship was further cemented by life in a small town. It only had 3 roads. Together, we endured the pain and mortification of dancing the Highland jig in front of the school and parents. We enjoyed the fun of picnics and singing the hits of our idols. Cynthia liked Cliff Richard and loved singing Bachelor Boy. When we went on to the only secondary school in Ginger, Cynthia, who had a fine analytical mind, was one of the few girls who studied pure sciences for the Cambridge O-level exams and passed with flying colors. Our school was unique as we had many out-of-the-box teachers from other parts of the world. So our generation of students were more confident and had broader horizons in a pre-independence era. And I think that in essence, Cynthia and the rest of us Ginger girls were very special. We became very trendy, moved from our girls' frills to pint-sized miniskirts, and made some serious soul moves on the dance floor. Yes, very special indeed. When Cynthia, Frida, and I were admitted to do our A-levels at Gayaza High School, the most prestigious and foremost girls' school in Uganda, we were introduced to the then President of Uganda, Milton Obote, as the first Asian girls to be ever admitted to Gayaza. We were the awesome threesome there, and apparently set many a heart aflutter in the boys of the Makerere Agriculture campus next door. Cynthia went on to complete her studies before pursuing a successful career in a government cooperation. Frida and I went on to Makerere University, where we met John, who was finishing his BSc in mathematics. John calculated that we were too naive and gave us some complicated statistics about the trends of the hippies in the 70s. I made a quick calculation on my part and thought it was time he met a good and holy girl, and asked him to deliver a parcel to Cynthia. Well, the moment he saw this beautiful goddess, he forgot the hippies, and the rest is history. Years later, my husband Edgar and I had a little part in the preparation of the church wedding when John stopped for a few hours in Nairobi while en route to the wedding. John and Edgar chose and bought the wedding dress in the only bridal shop in Nairobi, and later we stopped at the jeweler's to buy the ring. Not knowing anything about gold, we told the jeweler that we wanted the best 24-karat gold. Well, John could never remove his ring, as 24 is too soft, but was perfect for Cynthia, because no predators for a man with a ring. Paul and Rachel, you were blessed with a mother who will make you hold your heads in pride, and her beautiful soul has left a trail of beautiful memories and a torch of her legacy in your hearts. I say, ease your grief. She's not gone, for in your heart she lingers on. Her smile, her laugh, her special way will comfort you from day to day. And John, Paul, Rachel, Chess, Mike, and little ones, please remember that you have the love and support and prayers of your family, friends, and so many of Cynthia's dear friends. Rest in peace with God in heaven, Cynthia, our sunshine girl. And you see, the sun was shining today in the winter cold. And we shall miss you dearly. I shall miss your candid and forthright opinions about my happy contours that will make my getting through St. Peter's gates a tight squeeze, as well as so many wonderful and happy times. I will remember you calling and saying, "Hey Tess, you in town or wandering off?" And I'd say, I'm right here, Cynthia. Hello, how are you? And we pray God helps us all process your loss as we miss you beyond belief. Thank you.
I'm sure you noticed the trend, and Cynthia would be very, very happy because we see all ladies coming up to say a few words. So we'll carry on with the trend, and I'm going to call upon Lisa Rodriguez, Cynthia's godchild. Now, I didn't have a chance to find out more about Lisa, but when she's up here, we shall make our own judgment. So Lisa...
I think so. I didn't realize I was going to get judged. So now I am nervous, actually. Cynthia was my mother's sister. Cynthia was my aunt. Cynthia was my godmother. Cynthia was the youngest of 4 siblings, my late Aunt Melba, my mother Fina, and my uncle Rosario. Cynthia was the youngest in the family, for whatever reason, had earned her the name of Baby. In fact, for the first several years of my life, I actually thought her name was Baby. And for some, our third cousin, she was Bontu. I hope I say that right. I guess at some point the family decided she had outgrown this nickname, though I'm not sure what took so long, as by then she was already married and had her first baby, Paul. Though I have spent many years abroad and did not have the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Cynthia, I do know this. Cynthia was generous. She gave what she had, whether it was material, goods, food, or her time. When there was a train derailment in Mississauga in 1979, it was without hesitation that Cynthia and John took us in when we were told to evacuate. We were a family of 5, with 3 kids under 14. They were a family of 3, and Rachel was soon to be born. My mother shares that Cynthia was generous with her time. She would visit the sick and would regularly visit a senior's home to play cards with the residents every Wednesday afternoon until the pandemic prevented her from continuing. And when she traveled, she would always take little gifts with her for those who were less fortunate. Cynthia was principled. Whether you agreed with her or not, very often not, you had to appreciate she had her fundamental principles in life, and she lived by them. Cynthia was stubborn. And I have to start by saying this runs very deep in our family. Mom remembers that when Cynthia was reprimanded for anything in her early teen years, she would resort to the silent treatment, sometimes for a few hours, sometimes for a day, and sometimes for far longer. Cynthia was a woman of faith. She deeply believed and practiced her faith daily. It was reassuring to know that when there was any need for some extra support in our lives, we knew there was a mass being dedicated or prayers being said. Even when my family lived in Ghana for 10 years, every once in a while we would receive a mass dedication card, especially for the birthdays of our children, Talia, Noah, and Aiden. And Mom recalls that she was always ready to recite the rosary. On a recent trip, Cynthia and John took my parents. They were on a drive. Suddenly she ordered my father, Edmund, to put the radio off, and she started reciting the rosary. The other 3 joined in. My sister Ingrid also recalls that we had a family outdoor event some years ago. Somehow Ingrid's teenage girls at the time, Dana, Jessica, and Ariel, and our cousin Manuel's girls, who were visiting from the UK, ended up in Cynthia's car. When we all arrived at our destination, the girls came out of the car looking stunned. They just joined in unwittingly on a recitation of the rosary all the way. Cynthia was thoughtful. Beyond her community efforts, she was also thoughtful about the small things. When I was 11 years old, she called my mother and asked her if I wanted to go to Goa with her. At that time, flights were 50% if you were 12 and under. And she thought it was good timing and a good opportunity for me. Thanks to that thoughtfulness, I was able to spend 2 months in Goa, going back and forth between my grandparents' homes, and I really loved every minute of it. Cynthia was fearless. There was very little that would rattle her. She didn't even fear death, as we've heard on and on. I just learned from Paul and Rachel recently that she had been preparing them for this day since they were youngsters. With her strong sense of faith, she knew there was somewhere else to go, and there she would be reunited with her parents, Nascimento and Rosie, and eldest sister Melba, amongst other loved ones. Cynthia was impactful. She left an impression, wherever she was and with whatever she did. She could be blunt and rambunctious, and she could be patient and deliberate, all at the same time. With this, she was able to have an influence on those around her and have an impact on people's lives. Cynthia was proud of our Goan heritage. She and John have always been a great resource for us on the history of Goa, its culture, and its language. When Thomas and I got married, it was in his hometown in Austria. We were happy that Cynthia and John were able to participate. Since we had a mosaic of cultures attending, we asked everyone to bring something to represent their own. Cynthia and John came with a bottle of Feni, and they sang for the group a few tunes in Konkani. Till this day, we have family and friends still talking about that. Cynthia was witty. She had a quick wit, always with a bit or a lot of sarcasm. We visited Cynthia and John for dinner probably about 15 years ago now, when we were living in Ghana and visiting. The banter between the Nazareth family had us in stitches. It was the first time that Thomas had spent a good amount of time with them, and he was literally in tears from laughter. Cynthia was disciplined. She believed that when you are in, you are all in, and didn't deviate from the plan. Mom shares that she had a routine each day, which was to rise early, get well dressed, and attend Mass. She would then follow it with a bit of shopping. She was meticulous about what she ate and when she ate. Cynthia was fierce about family. Her devotion to her immediate family was obvious, and I know that Paul and Rachel will talk about that more. But this extended to us. My sister Ingrid recalls that when John's nieces were her age, visited from the US, Ingrid would stay over at Cynthia and John's house so she could spend time with them in the summers. My brother Erwin also remembers her visiting his early soccer games to support him, and she attended his graduation proudly. And when Erwin visited from San Diego with his family, Cynthia would make sure to spend time with them so she would surely know his two daughters, Sophia and Isabella. And Mom told me yesterday a memory that speaks to Cynthia's stubbornness, fearlessness, and fierce devotion to family. Thomas and I married 4 days after 9/11 in Austria. Beside the obvious tragedy of that event, it meant that many family and friends had their flights canceled and ended up missing our wedding. But not Cynthia. When all flights were shut down, Cynthia and John were told they were not able to get out of the country. But she made it clear that she would, and told the officials that she was going to stay put until they could get 2 seats to Austria. And they did, and they brought the Feni. Cynthia was present. When she was around, you knew it. She had your attention, and she would give you hers. I think we can assume that she is present now. There is no way that there would be an event where she knew we were all talking about her, and she is not here to listen in. And if you listen well now, you can hear her say to me, as she did so often and affectionately, "You stupid girl." It is clear that there is so much of Cynthia and Paul and Rachel, so much of Cynthia and Paul and Rachel, and though I have not had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with them yet, I am sure also in her grandchildren, Gabriel, Luke, and Tristan. On the very evening we lost Cynthia, as the family sat around their living room in disbelief, more and more similar stories were being told. And based on my experience yesterday with the hundreds of people who came to pay their respects at the funeral home, I imagine that every one of you in this room has a story as well. That same night, John said that he saw a piece of her in all of us, and I hope that brings some comfort. Cynthia, we know you are here and that you will continue to watch over us. And of course, give us the forceful nudge that we inevitably need every once in a while. We will miss you. Rest in peace.
Thank you, Lisa. And you were talking about judgment. I think Cynthia, being your godmother, did a wonderful job because you came and expressed yourself like Cynthia would do. Not worried about anything. The truth is the truth. John's pillar and post, strength to him and to the family after Cynthia passed away. Two of them, Rachel and Paul, were there to comfort John, to be with him, and to assure him that he was not alone. The saying goes, the last shall come first and the first shall go last. So Rachel was second in the family, so I'm going to call Rachel to come up first. Rachel? By the way, I know Rachel for a long, long time, and I must say this. If you want affectionate and love, go to Rachel.
First of all, I want to say from the bottom of my family's hearts, thank you so much for coming yesterday and today to honor my mother. We are well aware that she loved so many people, and they really loved her back. Lord knows she was such a vibrant character, and she brought so much joy and laughter into so many people's lives. As her daughter, I'm well aware of what a privilege it was to have a mother like her. To have a woman who was strong in her faith, but also intelligent and wise and unbelievably caring. She loved her grandchildren fiercely too, and loved to tease them and play with them and cook for them and make them laugh. I know they will cherish the memories that they made with her forever. And I'm grateful for the love that she showed them, because she built their confidence through the love that only a grandmother can give. She was also a person of deep, deep faith, and it drove her to truly be Jesus' disciple in this world and care for people in a way that only she could. I say that also because while our Catholic faith doesn't allow women to be priests, my father and her found a way to truly be a dynamic duo for Jesus Christ every day of their married lives. She also found a way to give mini homilies and spiritual guidance to everyone she met. She consoled people everywhere she went because of her faith. People constantly turned to her to pray for different people and issues. And it was around the GTA and her parish that she was part of 3 prayer groups and the Go in Rosary group. She ran Bible study, read at masses, helped at parish picnics. She and my father were at the heart of St. Patrick's Church. And she loved every minute there, and would tell me that every day on the phone. Thank you to all the parishioners and prayer group members who are here who gave her such purpose and prayed with her so regularly. I ask you to keep your connections with my Father, for you will see her in his face. I have to also speak about what I admired most about my mother, which was her courage and her boldness. I don't think I need to explain to anyone here today that she was opinionated and bold. And if you went to speak to her about a problem, she wasn't going to tell you what you wanted to hear, period. Her friends could trust her to be real with them. I also mention her courage because as an adult myself now, navigating the world of parenthood, working in education, and maintaining social relationships, life is pretty darn overwhelming sometimes. But Mom had the courage in the 1970s to handle the aftermath of the Ugandan expulsion and start a whole new life at the beginning of her adulthood in London, England, and then in Toronto, Canada. She came to a new country and navigated being a woman in the workplace in the 1970s when I know that was no easy job. When I really think about it, Mom's emotional toughness and boldness likely arose from her life experiences, which forced her to come through so many challenges. She really built an incredible life in Canada with my father after getting married in Goa, India. I think it was the hardships that she went through that led her to reach out and support so many newcomers in the past 48 years that she spent in Canada. So many people at the visitation yesterday told me about the time she spent with them, when she drove them places and cared for them when they had newly come to this country. I also want to share a story about her courage, because I think that's something that she would want all of us to embody in a time which is actually full of so many bullies. The story took place in Uganda in 1993, in a very emotional return for my parents to their homeland, where they had been expelled 25 years previously. The trip was not easy for her. The country had been quite demolished, and I know it was hard to see their once beautiful home in not great shape. To travel around and see their stories come to life was beautiful. But to see their homes destroyed, especially my mother's family coffee plantation and their childhood home run down, was so hard. Mom still had the courage to return and face all of this and take us with her to show us the place of her and my father's childhood. I also mention courage because the military presence in Uganda was still prominent in 1993. And one night when my family were out taking a short walk near our hotel, a Ugandan soldier with a huge military rifle followed us. Myself being a Canadian teen and pretty oblivious to danger, I had no idea this soldier was following us. And in the darkness, my mother snapped and turned around and shouted at the soldier to stop following us and trying to intimidate us. To see my mother stand up to that soldier in the darkness is an image I take with me through my whole life. And for those confused, it was never about the soldier that night. It was about Idi Amin kicking out 50,000 South Asians from Uganda and murdering 300,000 Black Ugandans and destroying the world that my mother and so many people loved. She was done being bullied, and she did not want her children to be intimidated and to lose their human rights the way she and her entire community had in the past. But that was my mother. She was bold, and she wasn't going to let anyone bully her or her family. I take that memory of her into my own life daily, and when I'm nervous to stand up to injustice, I remember her example. I also have to say that as a mother, she loved us children so fiercely. but with that came a lot of high expectations. And I'm aware that those academic expectations were set high because she knew that life was never going to be easy in the Canadian economy. She was an amazing role model as a teacher, and she taught my brother and me regularly at home and volunteered with countless children at my old elementary school. Her tough love mentality is one that I use in my own classroom every day. The last thing I want to mention here today is the creation of the Goan Community Center, which opened a mere year ago, thanks to hundreds of committed Goan Indians with Selwyn Colasso at the helm. She enjoyed every minute at the club, as she called it, and she loved to spend time with the Silver Lining Seniors group. This past year was truly the silver lining in her life. I can only suggest that all her friends continue to take advantage of everything the Goan Community Center has to offer. Finally, I know that she died so suddenly, and I've struggled with her loss in our lives, as I'm sure you have too. But after a few days, I stopped, and I looked at the world and the way the violence, the human rights issues, and the wars have become really prominent all over the globe. Cynthia took all these concerns to Jesus and Mother Mary in her prayers every single day. But to be honest, I think she wanted to take more action. She was going to head to the afterlife and tell Jesus exactly how to handle Ukraine and the Afghani women's issues. I know her adventure in the afterlife will be incredible, and she's surely asking questions of God and hugging all our ancestors and making new friends in heaven too. I only await the day when we will meet again. But for now, we have to push onwards and carry out her legacy of kindness in the world. We love you, Mom. Thank you, everyone.
Well spoken, Rachel. And now, to conclude the formal part of the proceedings, I would like to call upon Paul to say a few words, but before I do that, I just want to express my, I don't know if the word is thanks, but the word that I'm looking for is the organization that went into this. And Paul played such a prominent part that you could walk through with this plan with your eyes closed and things would be all right. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul.
At this time of grief, we turn to Scripture and cry out to the Lord for solace. In the Old Testament, in the book of Methuselah, chapter 19, verse 84, how can you just leave me standing, alone in a world that's so cold? Maybe I'm just too demanding. Maybe I'm like my father, too bold. Maybe I'm just like my mother. She was never satisfied. Why do we scream at each other? This is what it sounds like when the doves cry. Think about that. Jesus said that. No, that was Prince. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you think we were going to end this on a sad note? It's a celebration of the life and legacy of Cynthia Nazareth. My mother was a paradox of paradoxes, a combination of Joan of Arc, Anna Wintour, and Samuel L. Jackson. It has been a wonderful thing to hear so many stories from all of you. My father says constantly, I see Cynthia in the faces of my friends and family. These past few days at the house and on the phone and in person at the visitation where hundreds came to see her. You know, I only knew one Cynthia, the one who raised me with John Nazareth, who is, of course, a Moidikar for sure. The man has several degrees, a master's and an MBA, and then married a woman who told him he was an idiot his whole life. I joke, but you know truly, they loved each other deeply. And we're heading to celebrate 49 years of marriage soon. And sure, they fought a lot, but Rachel and I know they were working out the unpacked trauma of that Ugandan expulsion. And he adored her. Not just in spite of, but because of the outrageous things that she did and that she said, for she was fabulous. And yes, many of us got burned if we got too close, but by God, we were all moths to her flame, were we not? She had several professions in her life, but as I've heard recently from many of you, her last profession was Juber, Jesus Uber. One in 10 people condoling us would say she would call me and give me a ride, even when I didn't want to go, even to places I didn't want to be. And her payment was what she desired most, not money, but prayer. And speaking of prayer, indeed our love to the St. Patrick's family, which raised Rachel and I as well. For as you know, faith and community was my mother's core. And a close second, as Rachel shared, something that we, her children, are so glad she got to experience, if only for a short time, is the Goan Community Center. Selwyn and the GOA team, our thanks and admiration. And I will see you this weekend at the AGM, where I'm bringing my father to heel by arguing with you about the bylaws and audited statements. This is not a joke. I'll see you Sunday. What I, her son, am most grateful for is a gift I truly did not understand until now. Do you remember the Alien movies? When that alien at first hugged your face and then gestated inside of you using your own DNA and then eventually burst out of your chest in a terrifying way? Well, let me ask you a question that not even that director did not ask. What if the alien loved you? This, my friends, is the only metaphor for what I can imagine it must have been like to be the mother of Rachel Nazareth. Einstein and Freud could have written a paper on where physics met the paradox of her push and pull friendships over a lifetime. And adult Rachel changed all that. Don't get close to me. You don't know me, she would say to people. And my sister would say, woman, I am you. I was made from your blood and your sinew and your bone. I came from inside of you. And she dragged my mother, who loved every minute of it, both of them laughing and having a ball around the world. Pray you have a child that cares so deeply about your happiness and making your dreams come true as Rachel did for my mother. I want to say out loud how much that means, that besides my father who adored her, she had someone who fought to make her happy and knew her perhaps better than she knew herself. When her beloved grandchild Tristan lit a candle for her at St. Patrick's the Sunday after she died, he asked to light a second candle. For who, Baba, we asked. We need to light one for Jesus because now he has grandma to deal with, he said. It was a blessing that her grandchildren knew her, my own Luke and Gabriel included. There are too many of you to thank, especially for all that curry, the samosas, the potato chops, and although my gastrointestinal system is now suing me for cultural harassment, it was and is the taste of love, and we felt it. You wrapped your arms around us, and I ask you, please, like we will, take care of my father in the days ahead. My mom always told us to be ready, that she wanted to see Jesus, and when he called, she would go quickly. But Mom, what do we do then? Just call John and Gladys, she said, and the rest will fall into place. And while they can't be with us today as they walk in their own grief journey, I'm so grateful my father still has friends like each and every one of you. And most of all, Dr. Colin Saldana, to care for him as he did with my father's prostate cancer and cared for my mother who hated medicine and doctors, but she respected Colin, for he was not just a man of medicine, but a follower of Jesus Christ, who deeply cares for the state of God's kingdom here on earth and the health of all of our souls, if not just our bodies in it. When Richard Nixon insulted Pierre Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister who welcomed my family to Canada from Uganda, he famously said, "I've been called worse things by better people." My friends, I assure you, when it comes to my mother, you've never been called worse things by a better person. My mother had almost no regrets, but if she had one, it's that she couldn't tell you off one more time because she loved each and every one of you enough to do it. Before I finish, I ask you if you could join me in pissing her off one last time by saying with me, "I love you, Cynthia." Say it with me, "I love you, Cynthia." But remember, when you say it after this, do something. Give someone a ride, invite someone to your Christmas table, affect the world like she did by doing something, not just by saying something. Remind them that they are not alone, and we will not be alone even without her. Stanford neuroscientist David Eagleman and a peer in my fundraising profession, Jen Love, teaches that there are 3 deaths. The first, when our body dies. The second, when we are put into the earth, which we shall do next. And the third is when your name is spoken for the last time. And while my mother will enjoy life eternal with her Father in heaven, if you keep saying her name, my mother will live on forever in our hearts too. Say it with me. I love you, Cynthia.
I love you, Cynthia.
Thank you all.
Paul, I did not know you had that so much sense of humor. You must have learned it from Cynthia. Anyway, that comes to the formal end of the proceedings. You have just a few minutes to mingle while John and the family will take our leave, because there are sandwiches for those who haven't had some. Please go and help yourself, because the family has to leave us to go to the cemetery for the final interment. And any of you who would like to join them, please do so at around 2 o'clock, because you might get got caught in traffic, and the ceremony at the graveyard cannot but repeat it, has to start at 3 o'clock. Anytime after that, there will not be an interment. Just to end, after all the speeches we heard, I still want to come back to the formula that Cynthia had to make everyone happy. Joy. In that order, Jesus, others, and yourself last. If you follow that, you will bring the same joy that Cynthia brought to all of us and will continue to bring. Thank you, and have a great day. Could I have your attention one more time? If you are going to the cemetery, please take a map with you, because the map will show you the plot number where Cynthia will be laid to rest. I'm going to repeat, please take a map with you, so once you get to the cemetery, you know how to proceed.